If you're into Web3 and the future of gaming, this is one for you, so make sure and stick around. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Joining me today is Corey Wilton, who is the co-founder and CEO over at Mirai Labs. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much, Paul. Appreciate it.
Hey, so let's learn a little bit about Mirai Labs. I think some of our audience may know a little bit about Mirai, but kind of give us the professor outlook here.
Sure. I guess a top-down. We started as a game studio, Web3 game studio, back in 2021, starting with Pegaxy. Many people would know that one. And gradually over time, I think we blended into more a tech studio that does build games at the same time, just identifying issues that we personally experienced and have shipped a bit of a product suite at this point. So yeah, that's where we sit right now. 2 games with a bunch of different, I guess, products in Web3.
Talk to me a little bit about that transition, from where Pegaxy was, a year ago to where you guys are today, because this is quite I won't say a huge shift, but it is a direction that is new for your project.
Yeah, I think it was a natural progression over time, just with the desire to be on mobile. We hadn't seen too many developments that we thought were suitable for us, at least when it came to mobile. So really, it just came down to the fact that we want a very specific user experience after we had experienced how much friction there was with onboarding users in Pegaxy version 1. So natural progression, I would say, over time out of necessity.
When you go into the issue of changing blockchains, moving from Polygon into Avalanche, I was just looking at Avalanche's latest tweet, Mirai Labs creator, popular of Pegaxy and Petopia, now migrating operations over to the Mirai chain. So a new Avalanche subnet. Talk to me about, first of all, the decision to do it, because many people would look at Avalanche and say, why choose Avalanche first? And then what was it that maybe Polygon did not offer that would cause you to go this direction?
For me, it was the people. And for our CTO, it was the fact that he didn't need to speak to people to build. They were readily available right now. I guess we're very opposite in that sense. So, documentation, availability of the infrastructure just allowed us to build without needing to speak to them until really like the final moments. We had almost built everything, the entire subnet, and then we just needed to speak to them to get some clarification. And it was at that point that Avalanche was like, wow, you guys are seriously building and building quickly. And that's where things kind of snowballed from there.
That's interesting, because I've heard this from several founders who have gone the direction of Avalanche or are building on Avalanche from the ground up. So intriguing to hear you say that. Let's talk about subnets, because obviously subnets, that's kind of the secret sauce of Avalanche. And if you look at what's happening over on their network right now, you can kind of see a full run. And most of you are watching our show, you know quite a bit about Avalanche, but you've got Beam subnet on here, Shrapnel's on here, quite a bit. And I was just looking at this. This is now on my screen, at least, we're talking 5 levels deep. When will your subnet launch? And is yours one of these unbeknownst numbers that are currently in that queue?
I would say so. I'm not certain. Like we're still new, right? It's only been out just 2 weeks or something like that. So still doing a lot of testing and stuff. However, we are live. Mirai chain is live. That was kind of why Avalanche was like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? So we just went straight out for it, all in. And I would say we're probably one of those numbers. Haven't been attributed just yet. Still early days. But obviously just looking at, the reason for us, at least for building that subnet, purely was actually value capture. From where we had come from with Polygon, and as a business, I think it's quite unwise what we had done previously, bringing upwards of 500,000 players, a lot of liquidity from one chain into another. We didn't get any of that value capture, right? There's nothing there for us anymore, and we thought that was unwise. And it simply came down to the fact that we could capture all layers of value if we built that subnet. And building an L2 for a startup studio like us, to be completely honest with you, Paul, is not viable. Extremely expensive, and it would eat into our ability to build games. So it was just the most cost-effective way for us to do it as well.
I'm surprised we haven't seen more, game founders move in this direction, because you're exactly right. Trying to, charge in that direction at the same time dealing with onboarding challenges, gamer growth, ecosystem, the marketing aspect of it. That's a lot for, especially for a startup studio to do, much less and most everybody, I would say, in Web3 right now are startup studios. They're less than 5 years old. So I can definitely see that. All right, so let's talk about the past, because there's still a lot of people that were aware of at the time it was called Pegaxy, I guess Pegaxy, I don't know naming, but the point is for a lot of those who were building or not building, but actually playing and or collecting these horses, where does this stand today? What happens to all of that infrastructure that was built in the past?
Pegaxy V2 is essentially what we're calling the next stage. It's our original vision. So I guess some context for what happened with Pegaxy version 1 is what we'll call it, is that we went to market as quickly as possible to take advantage of what was happening in the market, similar to what we're doing now, actually. And honestly, it just blew up with what we had released. And the community didn't want a more sophisticated visually game. They wanted to play the money game, which was the play to earn aspect. And so we built infrastructure around that to facilitate it. So like a governance platform, a data platform, so that they can make more informed decisions. And obviously we just allowed them to ride that as long as they like, because that's what they wanted. However, we still stuck to our original vision. So while we were obviously having V1 live, we were still building V2. And V2 is due for release in a similar stage as Petopia was just released, in like an early beta in January. So same goal, same mission, full mobile, release in the app stores, similar to Petopia.
Well, let's talk about GuildTech, because GuildTech, I think, is it's a different strategy for you guys, and it's one that may or may not work. But talk to me about what it is for our audience and really what you're trying to do in terms of accomplishing your mission there.
Easiest way to put it, I guess, an elevator pitch here is imagine esports, competitive gaming. You have GuildTech, and these competitive players want to play in a game with a good team. So there's going to be team founders similar to what you experience in esports. So these team founders come in. Their goal is to recruit the best players humanly possible inside the game. And they have a team maximum of 50 players inside of Petopia. What they're basically doing is competing on a global leaderboard for 10% of the entire game's revenue. In short, from the outside, that would look like decentralized esports. However, what we allowed is third parties to come in and speculate on these guilds, quote unquote, support them. And what they do is buy fractions of those guilds, similar to what people did when they were buying keys of users in Friendtex.
Okay.
So every time someone buys a fraction, the fraction price goes up on a bonding curve, again, similar to Friendtech. Now that attracts a very, very interesting dynamic of players in that ecosystem. You have the players who are playing the game to dominate, the team founders who are going out there to find the best players, but also find supporters, and then supporters who also want to, I guess, be a part of this ecosystem and potentially profit at the same time. These players are playing because they get a percentage of the guild's total earnings. So they could spend basically nothing to join the game. And if the guild, for example, somehow wins and earns $10,000, dependent on their performance, they will get a percentage of that. Let's say they contributed 50% of the work or the performance of the guild. They would get 50% of whatever the guild founder has allocated. So let's say he allocates 60% of all earnings to them. It would be 50% of $6,000, which is, to us, play to earn, just in a different way.
That's significant. Yeah, it is significant. Well, and I think, we talked about this in our Avalanche recap show earlier last week. Just many of the projects, Mirai was in there, and GuildTech was intriguing to me because you're right, it does kind of go hand in hand with what's happening in the esports area. And if you look at gamers and how they're thinking through the process of getting involved in game projects or something like this into guilds, this may work. I mean, what is the alternative if this doesn't work? If this doesn't work and you look at what you guys have done so far, what would happen?
Yeah, great question, Paul. I think that's what the industry is trying to answer. And that's why we ship this so quick, is because we've been focusing purely on building a fundamentally sound free-to-play mobile Web2 game so that if there isn't a Web3 thesis, we are able to still, as a studio, push hard to try and generate revenue as a studio. However, we also want to take advantage of whatever's happening in the industry. And at that time, just 3 months ago, Friendtech was absolutely what people wanted. And it was quite clear. When I just looked at it, I was like, all right, this play to earn ecosystem, the original model, I feel as if it just lacked the ability to facilitate the outside players. And guilds were fundraising because they wanted to go bigger, go harder. And it turned them into these mega giants. But in reality, it was the mom and pop guilds that were driving all of the actions inside of the game. And when I sat down and I looked at Friendtech, I looked at its flywheel, and then I put it inside of a game, I was like, this creates a scenario where it's almost self-sustaining. The guild managers, the guild founders are out there essentially recruiting the players for us, and at the same time are going to find speculators or supporters so that they can generate revenue for their guild, which is what they want. At the same time, every transaction, 5% goes to Mirai, and we recycle that back up into the global leaderboard, which they are striving for.
Yeah.
I just sat there and I was like, this is, at least right now, the clearest thesis that we have in Web3. And if this doesn't work, well, I don't see an alternative. You can be a AAA studio, but for a mobile studio, I mean, it's just a different, you can't compare us to Shrapnel. It's just different, right?
Right.
So it's the best thesis that we have now.
Okay, so this kind of changes the landscape too of when you think about what Guild Games did, along with what you mentioned, a lot of the larger guilds that were in the last run, and it, many of them were early, many of them got into trying to build guilds around Axie. There was a lot going on in that space. Obviously, that model sputtered with the Web3 gaming and obviously the fall off the market. So this will be interesting to see if this can work. If it can, this could be maybe the future of where a lot of these projects are going to be going for sure.
Fingers crossed.
Kudos to you. All right, so a couple other things in terms of Petopia, the success so far. How would you guys gauge this? I was just looking at your Google Play. I mean, it's a 3.7, 10,000 downloads right now. How would you gauge this right now in terms of success ratio?
I mean, with how quickly we launched it and in the stage that we launched it in, far greater levels than we had suspected. Yeah. So we hit those pretty key achievements in the app stores within the Philippines, which is the core user base always. The revenue was sitting at around 26,000 at the moment, just from pure in-app purchases, like a traditional free-to-play mobile game. Total of 42,000 users have played, unique users over the last 17 days. So it's just been a surprisingly organic growth for the stage that the game is at right now, I should say.
Very early.
Not doing any user acquisition or anything like that. Ridiculously early, yes. So it's a great sign.
Jumping back to the Pegaxy, and you go back to the legacy Pegaxy, what happens to all of the Pega NFT owners? What happens to this today?
So that will still exist in the second version. So not to reveal too much to them, because we haven't revealed it to them. However, in short, they will be able to essentially bring them over to the second version. How that looks or what it turns into is actually going to be up to them. They can, if they have a lower performing or a Pega that they're not so interested in, it isn't rare, they can turn it into something else which is valuable in the second version. Alternatively, if they do have a collector's one, like a found in Pega, for example, there'll be staking events and NFT sale events for Petopia that'll give them exclusive access externally out of the game, which is what we always promised originally anyway. However, beyond that, I mean, Pegaxy V2 isn't far from the original thesis that we had always strived to ship. So what their expectations will be is pretty clear, and that's kind of the direction that we are going in. So everything that exists previously should exist and will exist in the second version. How will be dictated by the users.
Okay, all right. Well, at least that shows some sign of a little bit of forwards compatibility, so that's good. When you think, now let's go back to Polygon for a second. You look at PGX, the VIS tokens. What happens to those tokens? How do those get managed?
So with PGX being, I guess the comparison here is like a governance token to most other games. Right. That's still going to be the primary token in that represents Pegaxy. It's still also the Mirai chain's gas token, right? how that's going to be used, I guess looking from the past, I guess our thesis on how tokens should be used in games is definitely different. They shouldn't be used as a hard currency or a soft currency in the sense, purely because controlling a game's ecosystem or economy, I should say, is fundamentally vital to making a game work. And we learned that if you voluntarily give that away to the community or speculators, unfortunately, I don't think there's enough money on this earth to be able to solve that problem. There's not enough people. Maybe Epic Games or something like that, a massive studio is able to solve a scenario like that. However, I just don't think a startup studio is capable. So we'll use it in different scenarios. Maybe they can purchase some items external to the game, definitely staking in all those external benefits that they're able to use it for.
Okay, so I mean, these kinds of challenges have been met before. You just think Beam, Merit Circle. What about the Mirai token and how that could apply into maybe the historic? Would that work at all?
Like creating a Mirai token?
Right.
That will be something that does happen. I guess this is the first time I'm saying it, but that is something that will happen in the future. And
interesting.
Beyond that, I think the direction that we will go is that you will see a token for every game. And we just think that's how it should be moving forward. Like the justification behind it is purely because the users borderline demand it. It's just what they want. And we will create utility around it and allow them to have fun with those tokens as well. But Mirai token as an ecosystem play, I guess you could say, will exist as well. When I won't reveal just yet, I don't think.
All right, well, good. Let's talk about interoperability, because that is one of the things, obviously, that Avalanche brings to the table here. And you think about the game ecosystem within AVAX now. What's the opportunity here for Mirai to be able to use, or Pegaxy in general, to be able to have that interoperability with other games?
So work with other games?
Yeah, with other games in the AVAX ecosystem.
I guess it's a difficult one. I haven't seen one really execute well. I've seen IPs, I guess, cross-pollinate in some degree. However, at least from my perspective, the wisest decision, it would more come down to IP plays. For example, you can see we use kind of chibi-style IP characters. We would love to partner with someone like Pudgy Penguins. That's more the direction that we would like to go over an interoperable game ecosystem.
Yeah, I think the brand IP connectivity is what a lot of people have looked to. I don't know that we would see game mechanisms really start to develop unless it was just very unique connections, much like what you kind of paired up against, like what, maybe like a Pudgy Penguins. But if you look at, we're showing some footage here of some potential projects that could have this kind of alignment where you have similarities, maybe new metaverses and or game structures that could play out. So I think there is some opportunities there. What about, so let's get into the app itself, the Mirai app, in terms of what new features, things of that nature, what can we expect, here in the near future at least?
Mirai app, I guess the way you should look at it is as a companion app to the mobile games. Fundamentally critical to how they operate and allowing the Web3 features to function. So inside of it, at its core, it's an MPC wallet, an EVM across the board. So it doesn't rely on anything Mirai. You do have the opportunity to use Mirai Chain and all of Mirai's products as well, but it does have a full dApp suite. So the goal there, I guess, is a vertical independent of that. However, anyone that does build on Mirai Chain, we do have another game that has already wanted to build on Mirai Chain because of Guild Tech. They were able to use this companion app to allow their users, the supporters, all of the guild creators, the players, just download this app, and it would take basically no time to do anything on chain. So if you click a button inside the game, it uses a deep link, it opens the app, you click approve, it's free gas on subnets, you're done. And that's kind of the experience that we wanted. If you're getting a newbie into the system, this is exactly the type of app that you want. And we built Mirai ID, which is, again, like an account abstraction onboarding system, which you use traditional logins. We did all of that stuff, right? So we just see it as it's the superior route. We had to build it if we wanted to be able to allow in-app purchases with cryptocurrency, on-chain actions inside an app store. They would need to be separated in some way. And we were just blessed enough to have them approved globally on all app stores, both the game and Mirai App.
Why do you think the app stores are not pushing back on this? And do you think there's a potential, roadblock in the future for these kinds of apps?
To be clear, we pushed exceptionally hard. They may have just got annoyed at how hard we pushed them.
Okay.
We pestered them forever. So Mirai App was very hard, very, very hard. And I think it's because they don't really understand what you're building. If you build anything with like swaps and stuff like that, they literally ask you for like it's not we may just be using an API from another exchange like DEX. But they just think we're operating a complete exchange and they want to see all of your documentation. It is extremely difficult and you need to message them maybe 3,000 times. So there will absolutely be pushback. However, I think it's testament to how hard we worked this and how smooth the process is, even in these early stages, that there is a viable system. You can build it. We're at the point where it's almost as smooth as buying a traditional in-app purchase.
Interesting.
And unfortunately, you just need an extra app. But inside of that app, we've created a whole suite of products that you can also use as well. So there is a reason to have the app.
You probably were educating them at the same time. They were probably just learning along the way in many cases.
I'm not even sure we were speaking to the same people. It is truly insane. The amount of rejections that we did, it was literally a 6-month process. We developed the app so much further. And genuinely, Mirai App took probably 6 months to get into the App Store.
Interesting. Last question to you. Just in general, when you think about roadmap, AR, VR, this is something that we're seeing more integration into a lot of games, especially on the Web 2 front. How would this look for you guys in terms of a strategy?
AR, VR?
Yes.
I think that's not our forte. That's just the reality of it. Maybe in the future, but right now the games that we want to build are casual to mid-core mobile games that people love to play and can easily access. End of story. We just need distribution. That's why we pushed hard for the app stores.
AR, VR has its place already just because of the success we've seen with not only the MetaQuest, but just also what Apple's doing. But there's a lot of games that are moving in that direction. But I think there's such a huge market. I mean, you're talking about 3 billion players worldwide. So this is not something that there's not enough room for all this. But anyway, hey Corey, it's been great having you on the show. Thanks for the update. Because we always love to dive into these projects, learn a little bit more about it. We learned some stuff today, so we appreciate your time for sure. And good luck to everything you have going over there at Mirai.
Thanks so much, Paul. I appreciate it. If ever I get the opportunity in the future to look back at what we're building now and see if it worked, would love to.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely get you on. That's for sure. Yeah, maybe you're tuned in over here on the podcast side of things. So let's get over here to the YouTube channel because you'll get a chance to kind of catch these games when we do talk Web3 and kind of the future of gaming and blockchain. Because the visual side of this is very important for you guys to really kind of grasp this. This is something, if you're new maybe to not only crypto, but maybe you're in the gaming space and you're starting to experiment with Web3, this is one of the channels, hopefully, that will give you the business side of what's happening in Web3 and at least get your head around this. So subscribe to the channel, make sure and jump into the Diamond Circle. Hit me out there on X, very simple, @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.